Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Just want to welcome you to the African Immigrant Health Research Collaborative on this, our next journey, the National Report Out. Looking at the list, it seems like we have people came in from all over the world. This is fantastic. So, fasten your seatbelt, be ready. We have a lot going on, and we're going to make sure you enjoy every second of the presentation. I'd like to tell you a little bit more, but I think you want to hear the presentation, you want to hear the program, but I welcome you. My name is Julius, and I live in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm going to turn it over to Chioma to pick it up.
Thank you, Mr. Julius. Good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. I second what Mr. Julius is saying. Welcome. We're excited to have you and really engage in some conversation. My name is Chioma Nnaji. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts at the Multicultural AIDS Coalition. Do want to let you know that we have African French interpretation for our time together. So I will ask our interpreters to please provide directions in French so that we can make sure that we have our participants in the right room.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Moi, c'est Aminata. Je suis interprète anglais-français, français-anglais. On a l'interprétation disponible ce soir pour cette réunion. Si vous êtes sur votre ordinateur, regardez en bas de l'écran. Vous verrez une image qui ressemble à un globe. Vous cliquez là-bas et vous serez en mesure de choisir French ou bien français pour pouvoir accéder à la chaîne française où les interprètes vont pouvoir interpréter pour vous. La chaîne n'est pas encore activée, donc vous attendrez. Dès que ce sera activé, on vous fera signe pour joindre cette chaîne-là. Merci.
Thank you. And partners, if we just watch the chat to make sure that if anybody needs help. Thank you very much. Next slide. Just to remind us, I know we've been in this virtual space for a couple of years now, but we are going to be recording, and that is it's a recording that we will be able to share with others who weren't able to attend with us today. We do encourage you to please use the chat to dialogue and ask questions. There will be plenty of time for us to get into conversation. And so we want to make sure that we do it orderly. So raise your hand if you want to have a question or have a comment when that time comes. And then also don't forget to mute when you're not talking. And of course, don't forget to unmute when you are talking. Next slide, please.
All right, let me share back. So I needed to put the interpreters in their room. Okay.
Okay,
So
thank you.
share now. Okay.
So while Agatha is doing
right.
that, just a show of hands, how many of you all did actually attend the summit here in Boston? Raise your hand, use your emojis, put in the chat. Let me just do a quick glance. Oh, okay. A couple of people. Great. All right. So it seems like we have more people who didn't. So this is going to be great to hear you all's insight and feedback about what we accomplished during the summer. You missed something now. We're going to give you a little taste, but you're not going to be able to have the full experience. But we're definitely excited to get your feedback. Agatha, you ready?
Yes.
Next slide, please. So we just want to acknowledge our sponsors. We are sponsored by PCORI, which is the Patient Centered Outcomes Research Institute. Our summit was also sponsored by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of HIV and AIDS, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, NASTAD, and also NEATEC. And so we want to, of course, say thank you to our sponsors so for us to be able to have this opportunity to engage in dialogue and also to do this work for our communities. Next slide. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Portia, who will welcome us into the space. Ms. Portia, unmute.
On behalf of the AIHRC and Ms. Donna and the Multicultural Community Family Services, we welcome you again. And part of that welcome is to ask you to join us under the Palava Hut. It is a special time. We said to you to come, right? Come and be a part of this report back. And as you have come, about 43 of you, we said, now join us under what we call our Palava Hut. And what does that mean? If you are from Africa, many parts of the United, I will say United Africa, we're getting to the place of calling it United Africa. Not yet, but we're getting there. If you're from Africa, you know that coming from the rural area, the villages, parts of urban areas, we come together to problem solve. We come together to talk about issues impacting our community, our rural villages, and we do so under the leadership of our elders. In Liberia, it would be the paramount chief, the town chief, or the zones in the other parts of the country or of the continent. It could be someone else. And we come and we listen, we hear them out, we put before them our problems, they listen to us, we listen to them, and together we come with a solution for the good of the community. But beyond that, when we come together as part of the joining, we come to you as a way of welcoming people into the village for the first time. And this is a very informal joining under the Palava Hut. When we go to the village for the first time, we go into a town or we go into a home, we want to make people feel very, very welcome. And so if it was the village or the rural setting, I will welcome you, or the villagers or the people of the town will welcome you very openly with what will be known as a white chicken, or with coins, usually a silver dollar or a dime, or with kola nuts. Well, in the United States, we do not have the kola nuts to welcome, and we certainly do not want to give you a white chicken, because you might say, what? And yeah, quack, quack, you might just run away. But by welcoming you with those things, we are saying to you that this is not your home, this is your town, this is your village. You are welcome here, and you are no longer a stranger. So since we are not in Liberia or other parts of Africa, and we do not have those things, we have adapted under the Palava Hut, and we are welcoming you with coins. And you can see the coins as you are looking on your screen. We have the quarter, the dime, the nickel, and the penny. And the quarter represents relationships, curiosity, and reflection. The dime, liberty, peace, and strength. The nickel, spontaneity, unity, and adventure. And the penny represents oneness, a fresh start, and belonging. So one of the things we'd like to do as we ask you to join us now that you have come, and as we ask you to join us, is to look at these coins and put in the chat which one of these coins resonate with you, and tell us why. Is it the quarter that represents relationships, curiosity, and reflection, or the nickel, liberty, spontaneity, unity, and adventure, or the dime, liberty, peace, and strength, or the penny, oneness, a fresh start, and a new beginning? So let's get started in the chat. Put in there, as many of you as you can, which one of these coins speak to you and why. What is the significance? What does it say? Share with us. So we're going to take about a minute, since we are all chatting, and let's hear from you. But let's take a moment of reflection as you do, as we do collectively, and as we write. Hmm. Keep going. We have about 45 seconds. I know you're thinking. There are 46 of us in here. Thank you very much. For 20 seconds, let's keep it moving.
Can we see the descriptions of the coins again, please?
Okay. All right. We have a lot to unpack today and a lot to cover. So in the interest of time, we're going to sort of not spend as much time as we normally would. So we want to say to you that you've said so much about your coins, and much was said. Someone said it's because I'm curious. Some people talk about you know, really being invested in relationships and wanting new beginnings. So I would love for one or two persons, preferably two, to just quickly share outwardly in this space why you chose your coin. Anyone can do that. Why did your coin resonate with you? Especially if you did not write in the chat. Just take a few seconds to say something.
Hello, my name is Guyfine George. I am from the Liberian Radio and Television Network, and I chose the quarter because I'm curious. I am here for relationship building, and I just thought this would be a great opportunity to get both at the same time.
Thank you, Garfin. And Garfin is from Pennsylvania. And so am I in the Multicultural Community Family Services. And I know that the Liberian Radio and Television Network does a lot of relationship building around here. One other person, please. From another state. Who can give me that closer that we are looking for? Anybody else? Okay, I am going to go. I always like to say that my choice and why it resonates so much with me is the penny. The penny represents for me a fresh start as an immigrant coming to this country, beginning anew, being able to build a new life and to use what I have been able to build for myself to support many others in my community and to be able to support them to get a fresh start in their lives. And so I love the pendant and all that it has meant for me. So when we take our coins and we put it in our hands or we put it in a cup and we sort of do this, what do you hear? Anybody? Now, I know we can't be sleepy.
It jingles.
Does anybody hear anything?
Well,
Yeah.
someone said it jingles.
Jingle. Okay, that's a good jingling. But if you take all of these and you put it in your hand, what does it look like? What do I have in my hand?
Money.
money. But when I put all these five, the nickels, the dimes, and the quarters together, and someone wants a break a dollar bill, they would ask me if I have what?
Change.
Change. And part of the reason we're in this space is because we are creating and bringing about change for our community, meaningful change, impactful change. And so today we welcome you into this space. We'll welcome you under the Palava heart. We'll welcome you with a pure heart. We say, as you have come to this space and now have joined us under the Palava heart, a virtual Palava heart, you are no longer a stranger. You are now a member of the AIHRC family. We are one. This is a safe space where we can speak what is on our minds. We can speak our truth. And it is a space where we hopefully all can experience a sense of belonging and we can support one another. So we say thank you for coming to our report out. Thank you for joining us today in this space and under our virtual Palava hut. Shuma?
Thank you, Miss Portia. Always beautiful for you to welcome us in this space. Now I'm going to hand it over to one of our AIHRC partners, Kasha, to give us an overview of this evening.
Hey, my name's Kasha Kaczynski. I work for the Office of Maine Refugee Services in Maine, and I'm also an AHRC partner. Today's objectives are going to include 1, present summary and insights from the African Research Paradigm 2024 Summit, which will highlight reflections from academic and community attendees. 2, gather feedback and discuss the relevance of the ARP 2024 to participants' work and organizational directions. What impact did it have? And 3, identify actionable next steps for advancing the African Research Paradigm 2024 goals and furthering and growing the impact that the summit had. Our agenda will start with an overview of the African Immigrant Health Research Collaborative, followed by a summary of the summit and action steps. This will include a Q&A. Then we will have a panelist discussion with some exciting panelists. We'll have Sarah Lewis Ayo from Louisiana Organization of Refugees and Immigrants. We will have Dr. Gloria Aidu Frimpong from the University of Buffalo and Dr. Kelechi Ibe Lamberts from the University of Illinois in Chicago. And forgive me if I mispronounced any of that. Then we'll have a short break, and that will be followed by a community discussion. And we will end with a closing where we will have some announcements and say goodbye for now. Thank you. Oh, one more part for me, the participant agreement. Forgot. So let me just read this since, it's kind of a requirement we have to. Information generated during the event is a part of the ongoing work of the African Immigrant Health Research Collaborative, AIHRC, for the acronym. It cannot be used, adapted, copied, or published in any form, including audio, visual, or written, either in parts or as a whole, without direct express permission from the AIHRC.
All right. Thank you, Kasha. So, hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Agatha Digwe, and I'll be sharing with us today an overview of who we are and why we do what we do as the AIHRC. So, the African Immigrant Health Research Collaborative, as we've been hearing so far, is a 7-member partnership that includes patients, community-based organizations like social providers, social service providers, researchers, and state agencies who work towards the advancement of African immigrant health. First of all, let me apologize. My camera is not working. I tried turning off my whole
computer and turning it back on before the event, but it still didn't work. So you've been seeing my colleagues' very beautiful faces so far, but mine is a bit blank. So please, grace for that. Okay, so as a partnership, our mission is to amplify the voices, the experiences, and the solutions of all African immigrants. And we do this because we want to actively challenge, interrupt all the structural oppressions that pose challenges to our community. So our aim is to use community-led research, training, engagement activities to interrupt and challenge some of these, right? And to do this, we prioritize community cultural values as well as decolonized practices so that we strive to change or drive meaningful policies and system change that would improve the well-being and health of all Africans, their families, friends, for not just now, but for generations to come. So if you look to the right, you see all the members of the AIHRC. The picture at the top shows us like all female, but we have a very distinguished elder in our midst. He's our pride and joy. So we had to give him space too within this collection of the beautiful picture to show Mr. Julius. He wasn't around when we took the group one, and so we had to bring him in as the amazing person that he is in part of the group. So why do we strive to decolonize research, and why do we think about prioritizing community-led research, training, and engagement? First off, I will want to share with us a quote that has become like a mantra actually to our group. This quote, like anytime I hear it, kind of lights a fire within me, like anew, regardless of the fact that I've heard it over and over again, but it seems to just capture a basic part, a foundation of why this is so important. And that quote is by Dr. Linda Tuhiwai from the book Decolonizing Methodology. And the quote says that research is never neutral. It always serves the interest of those who have the power to define what counts as knowledge. For us personally, this has been important because we see this as if we are not part of that process that actually defines what counts as knowledge, then you have to continue to accept what somebody else imposes on you and defines as knowledge. And so with that in mind, when we start learning more about decolonization, we start looking at our own practices, what we have known as conventional or Western research practices, right? And so we realize that we have to decolonize these practices to identify with what our people would know as relevant and can actually identify with, right? So to decolonize research, what does that mean, right? It's a critical process where the person, the community, or the nation aims to dismantle power, control, and laws that have been imposed by external rule and authority through a method commonly known as colonization. To decolonize, you have to actively break down the systems of controls that have been left by the colonizers. You have to work to restore fair power balance. And then you value the indigenous knowledge and traditions while you do all of this in terms of moving away from decolonization. Decolonization as a practice moves us towards equity in research. And this was captured beautifully for those who were there at the summit by our elder oratory session, right? There was this portion where he talked about what it means to actually be an immigrant, regardless of whether you are immigrating from any other country or going to a new country. But there's always this double identity, this struggle from who you are, what you identify as a person, growing up, your upbringing, your ideas, your values from your home country, and then coming into the new space and trying to, assimilate the new culture and settle into the new space. So he termed this the soul and the body. So that identity, that self, that you bring with you from your home country serves as your soul, because you are always connected to it. It doesn't change or it doesn't go away just because of your move. So regardless of how you came into the country, whether you came as a refugee, as a student, a worker, an asylee, like regardless of however you came into this country, there's always that internal struggle about your person as you try to assimilate to the new place. So that new place becomes your body, because you are there, right? You are thriving and you are living. But there's always that connection to the home country that you always have to account for when you work with these groups. And so for us, when we think of decolonizing, removing those external rules and policies that do not favor us, that do not favor our communities, we do not leave it as a void. We have to think about what goes into that new space, what still brings us as a whole, as a person, into whatever we are doing. And for us, it's Africanization. Now, other races, other ethnicities can do this depending on their own population or based on what's important to their own group. But for us, because of who we are, we identify as Africans, and for us, so that's Africanization, right? And this is that deliberate process where we then reclaim, we promote, and we incorporate African values, ideologies, philosophies, and practices into research, which is very important because, as I said earlier, that's how we identify, that is who we are, and we bring that worldview into what we do, into how it affects our health, into how we live our life, how we work. So if you're going to be working with people, if you're going to be interacting with people, it's always good to identify their whole self, right? Especially immigrant groups. And for us, African immigrant groups, identify their whole selves, because that is all that makes them who they are. And so we bring Africanization and decolonization into every aspect of our practice in the research practices that we do from all our projects. So from our SALTI project, which was a photo voice project, to the virtual engagement project where we documented culturally and linguistically appropriate virtual engagement methods, down to the summit that we had a few months back, right? So when we are defining the problem, we are decolonizing and then Africanizing. When we are talking about the research design, we decolonize, we take away, and then we Africanize, bringing those values that we identify with. When we do the data collection and analysis, even the dissemination of findings, we always make sure that we as people, what we believe in, what we identify with, shines through and is promoted, because it's a beautiful culture, right? It's a beautiful worldview. So why lose it? And so this has always been the base and the foundation of our work, and continues to be. And we hope that everyone here identifies or agrees with that value. And that's why you're here today, to learn more about what we've done and how the amazing conversations that happened during the summit can continue to advance, right? Using the momentum we created to advance African immigrant health and well-being. So with that said, I will now pass it over to my esteemed colleague, Anissa Ali, so that as she highlights the parts of the events from the summit, as well as our preliminary findings. Anissa?
Thank you. Thank you, Agatha. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anissa Ali, and I am part of this wonderful collaborative partners. And I am going to now report out to you how the conference and some details about the conference. Next slide, please. So the goal of the conference the goal of the conference that we wanted to achieve was, one, we wanted to highlight the importance of decolonized approaches, including cultural, linguistic appropriateness, and in research methodologies engaging African immigrant and communities. We also wanted to explore patient-centered research that contributes to the understanding of the unique African immigrant needs. And the third, we wanted to facilitate a community academic network opportunities. We wanted to create a space where African researchers, African community and leaders, they could come together in a space where we could just be together, but also achieve these goals. Next slide, please. Everything in that summit, and from the opening to and the transitions, everything, we used African methods to to achieve that, to Africanize it, because we just did not want the conference to be something that we talked about. We brought all those African methods into the every part of the summit. The first picture that you see over here is a libation where we were the opening session was opened in, and some prayers and just African I'm sorry, I'm speaking too fast. Sorry. I will do my best. I had too many coffee today, so I'm all over the place, jittery. But the opening session, as you can see, the libation was used and to start the summit. And you see in the middle a picture of one of our partner, Donna, who was using shikari to announce transitions and to announce when we were going from one part of the like when we were going to breakout sessions, etc. We also had live African music. We had African poetry, and also in between the transitions of program and breakout rooms, we also had African trivia game. So everything, and including the setup, everything had an African theme. So when you came in, people felt right away welcome. They felt at home. They felt as if, things that they recognize in their culture and in other African culture. Next slide, please. And day one, the way we organized it, day one was we had an opening preliminary, and then we had an elder oratory, and then we had Palava hut conversation to bring more of the voices out in the conference. And then we also had an African village set up, and in that African village we had a table that was specifically for where people could write down some stories. We had storytelling table. We had African artwork. We had African and poetry. We had the live music happening. When you go to that African village, it really was very uplifting and very beautiful to see African all things African and shown there. Next slide, please. Day two, again, we had another plenary and panel, and then we set up research speed dating in 10 different subjects that were concerning to African immigrants. And some of those subjects, for instance, were like HIV/AIDS. We had a subject on data collection, etc. We had a lot of the subjects that we had on those tables were subjects that we have collected, where we have chosen very carefully, that was very relevant to our summit. But also folks could go, just like speed dating, they could go from one table to another table, connect with people, and then later on those conversations from those speed dating, we were able to take that and expand that, some of them, into the small talk. And we also had a small talk with where we had breakout rooms, where again folks were talking in details in some subjects. And later on, I will show you some of the findings of those small talk. Next slide, please. The first panel, which was moderated by me, that was the African immigrant community leading and engaging in HIV and COVID-19 research. We had 3 esteemed panelists that have done a lot of work in this subject. And the key findings of that panel was, next slide. These were the key points that came out from those from that first panel. Number one, how important it is to have a community-led research, and that is led by African and African researchers, and the methodologies such as the use of photo voice to capture African immigrant experiences. And the second thing that came out of that panel was how building trust and engaging the community and what those challenges were, the mistrust between the community and the researchers. We talked about strategies like engaging the community leaders, especially faith-based community leaders in faith-based settings. We also discussed the essential of building trust and bridging the gaps that already exist. One subject that came throughout the whole summit was Africanizing the data, the need to Africanize the data collection to reflect the unique cultural context and stories of African communities. This includes collecting the granular data and incorporating storytelling and research practices. Lastly, capacity building, the need for capacity building. The panel stressed out, and how we have to build capacity within the African immigrant communities and how we need to support local researchers, and we need to involve grassroots organizations in the research process from the start to finish, not just to come to the community and extract information from them and never to come back. So those were some of the key points from that panel. The second panel was decolonizing, deconstructing, reconstructing, and not the panel, the elder oratory was one of the most the highlights of the summit by Dr. Emeka, who was he was more than qualified to talk about the subject of decolonizing, deconstructing, reconstructing implications for African immigrant health and well-being in the U.S. And when Dr. Emeka was talking, he literally, all of us made us to think. And one of the first things that he said is, look at your names. And obviously a lot of people had, decolonized names. And he said, how about we start with that? And one of the side conversation that came out from there was a lot of people were saying, at the next summit, I will introduce myself with my African name. And this, this conversation that Dr. Emeka had with Miss Portia, it was like a fireside and tea talk type of thing, but it was one of the most amazing that came out of it. And next slide, please. This was the key points that came out of Dr. Emeka's session, which is decolonizing, start with yourself, and the need for African people to start decolonize themselves, including reclaiming their name, language, religion, cultural values, right? Secondly, African worldview as central, centering the African worldview in research and intervention, as the Western individualistic perspective often conflicts with the collective nature of the African thought. The importance of cultural and linguistic restoration, the importance of language and cultural continuity in decolonizing research, advocating for the use of African languages in this process, and the challenges of colonization, the impact, the mental and the social health of African immigrants globally. And last but not the least, definitely African research methods, adapting African-centered research methods like ethnography, storytelling, that honor African way of knowing instead of relying solely on Western methodologies. Next slide. And then we had, although we were in a space that's very square, right? We were in a hotel room that's very square, that does not, and has the opportunity to make a circle, but we were very determined, and Miss Portia in particular was very determined in making sure that we all sat in a circle. We sat in a very big circle, not perfect, but big circle enough where everybody was facing each other, and where we could have the Palava Hat conversation with the topic of what does it mean to Africanize research. Next slide. And from that Palava Hat and conversation that was led by Ms. Portia, Executive Director of Multicultural Community Family Services, and Ms. Donna, and these were the key findings of that conversation. Same thing that we started today. The Palava Hat, we had the joining ceremony which was very engaging and connecting everybody in that space. Although we had a large group, but this was a very engaged session. And the key points out of this session was, hire African immigrants into leadership. Make sure you place African immigrant in decision-making roles to promote equitable representation and influence in research, and have cultural and linguistic relevance. Researchers should understand cultural norms and traditions and ensure language accessibility, like the use of interpreters in different African dialects. Now, this supports having research questions to reflect the lived experience of African communities, ensuring cultural relevance and meaningful insights. And fair compensation. A lot of times, and researchers come in and they offer $10, $25 gift cards when they are using an hour and a half of the participants' time. And it's not even about the money. It's very disrespectful to offer such a small amount when you are taking, the time of participants, and you are not, you are not adequately providing them with payment that respect their time. A lot of African immigrants have to take time off from family, from work, and $10 and $25 gift cards does not reflect that. Community-led oversight and community IRBs to ensure ethical oversight that aligns with African values. And a lot of times we have IRBs that are led by non-Africans. There's no way that somebody that does not understand African values can, give ethical oversight to those research. Lastly, data ownership and collaborative teams. African communities should control the data they generate, with research teams leveraging community expertise to enhance quality and impact. Next slide. And then we had our second panel, a panel of our funders, Opportunity for African Immigrant Health, and that panel was moderated by Al Richmond, and who is the executive director of Community Campus Partnership of Health. And next slide. These were our funders that funded the conference: Amber Wilson and from National Institute of Health, Christine Fu from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and Courtney from Picori. And next slide. And these were the key findings from this session, documenting Africanizing research, the importance of systemically documenting the process of research, ensuring that the story is told globally, integrated into research reports. And we talked about a lot about funding barriers, that there was a critical discussion on the systemic underfunding of researchers led by Black and African researchers, which leads to competition between marginalized communities for limited resources. Again, another one, overcoming the scarcity model, shift from scarcity mindset to one of abundance, building relationship with funders and collaborating across communities to access sufficient funding for all. Again, the importance of community-led research came out again in this panel. The value of community-driven research, where local knowledge and community leadership are central to shaping the research priorities and the outcome. And lastly, but not the least, institutional support. Institutions and funders were urged to shift focus toward interdisciplinary and equity-centered research that support community-led initiatives, diverse methodologies, particularly for the marginalized population. Next slide, please. And then we went into small talks, and throughout the conference throughout the summit, we had infographics. We had a lot of these, and they were huge, like the size of me, like really big, of these canvases that captured the whole conference. And one of them is this is the Africanizing Research Paradigm Small Talk. And one of the ways that we chose is not just to talk about, use different ways to bring it out this conference. And this infographic actually shows the small talk. And these were the topics that came out of the small talks. These were what are the next steps, and the importance of having a research hub. There is a repository summit, and a way to unify everyone. All right, research resource, and some of the ways that we can make it, we can set up a tangible process in leveraging community, and what are the the resources that are there, the resources that we need. And capacity building is one of the rooms that we talked about. We all need support, and storytelling were some of the sub talks from the capacity building. Again, very important, disaggregating data, how important it is to have data that reflects on the African and African community. Photo voice, and was another one that came out from the small talks. And we did, after we broke out into these rooms, we came back and we did a report out of the small talk. Next slide. Next, we are gonna go into a panel discussion, and which will be led by Leslie. And before I bring Leslie up, I just want to say, the time and the energy that went in to coming up with every detail of this summit, and it was how important it is to have a spaces where African researchers are coming together, African scholars are coming together, where we are and not only being visible, but we are also building relationship and network across the United States, because of a lot of the members that came, they came from all over the states. And well, without any further ado, I want to welcome Leslie Coons to lead us into the panel discussion. Next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anissa. Welcome, everyone. Are we able to bring the panelists up on the screen here?
Yes,
what
we are.
Oh, great. Mhm.
Mhm.
So I'd like to offer a warm welcome to our three esteemed panelists this afternoon. We have Sarah Lewis Ayeo. She is the Community Advocate, Policy and Advocacy Organizer for Louisiana Organization for Refugees and Immigrants. We have Dr. Gloria Aido Fraimpong from University of Buffalo. And we have Dr. Kelechi Ibe Lamberts from University of Illinois, Chicago. So welcome, all of you. We will begin with a couple guiding questions, and with a plan to leave room at the end for some audience Q&A. Okay? And I appreciate whoever's working on this in the background to get the three speakers up here.
Yep.
All right, we got two. Welcome, welcome. Just a reminder as well that to be aware of the speed of our speech, we want to ensure that the interpreters can capture everything so all the participants can fully engage today. So we'll begin first with the conversation I think it would be nice to learn what brought each of you to the summit. I think we can all imagine you have pretty busy lives, full schedules, but you managed to carve out 2 days for the summit, including travel time to Boston. So what caused you to put everything aside and come to this summit? And Kelechi, I think, or Dr. Kelechi, since you're up here on the screen, do you want to go ahead and go first?
Oh, sure, absolutely. First and foremost, again, thank you all for inviting me to serve on this panel. Again, my name is Kelechi Bay-Lambert. And so, I mean, I would say it's a matter of faith, to be quite honest. And I don't say that to be poetic by any means. I actually was in the midst with a colleague who actually attended the summit with me, Dr. Leslie Coffey. We were having a conversation, I would say in May of this year. We were trying to figure out how to put together a consortium for African immigrant health. And we were talking about, trying to figure out a plan, and we were working on trying to find funding, and we were thinking about our own plan. We wanted to find a central location where we can share information and start figuring out how to develop repositories and how we can Africanize research and make it more accessible. We need our own. We need to do our own. It needs to be I forgot to talk slowly. It needs to be a for us, by us process. And I was thinking about doing this. And when we were getting ready to start doing some research on what was out there, lo and behold, I got an email about the summit that was happening. And it was by the African Immigrant Health Research Collaborative. And we were like, wow, this is very similar to what we were trying to put together. And so our mindset was, instead of trying to create or develop something that could be considered competitive, we rather learn and come in with a spirit of collaboration and learning and partnership. And I mean, we've all heard of the legendary Chioma Naji, but I also crossed paths with other good people that we've had similar, we've worked in similar organizations, like my sister Gloria there. We were part of the Caucus on Refugee and Immigrant Health for APHA. So it was really good to be able to arrive at that summit and kind of be among family already. So it really was just welcoming. And I really wanted to just come and learn a little bit more about how, the organization was working and how you all were going about executing and establishing these academic community partnerships and really pushing together that work. I really wanted to be able to learn and figure out how we can be able to put together something similar in the Midwest. And that's kind of what I've been forging ahead of after, being part of this. So it was a great honor. It was a great experience. There was a lot of amazing people that I met. And so it was definitely faith.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a hand up actually.
Yeah, can we, is it possible to bring Sarah up on screen here?
Yes, that's what we are trying to do. So she has her hand up so I can add to the spotlight. So you guys continue.
Oh,
Okay.
wonderful, wonderful, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Gloria.
I think for me, it's just because of my commitment to doing this work. I love research. Anybody who has, talked to me, know that I'm really passionate about research. But then also because this was really a community-centered place, I was excited because most of my training has been typically within academia, traditionally. So being able to come into a space where it was going to be community, there was going to be African-centered methodologies and also just knowledge systems, I was very excited about it. I think that because I had been used to going to academic conferences, I didn't know how this was going to be like. I was expecting a typical academic setup, with the posters and, the plenary speech. So it was really nice to be in that space. It was really, really nice. It was mind-blowing. I think that for me, when I saw it, I mean, apart from the fact that it had Chioma on it and it had a collaborative on it, I was like, oh, this, if you've been in this space long enough, you know that this is something you yearn for. Something that is African-centered, that is for us, you yearn for it. So to see such a gathering happen, there was no way I was going to miss it. Because I think before then, there was a conference I was at
And I was like, nope, I am going to try to get the authorization to be able to travel to this. This is a must go, like whatever justifications I need to, because there was also that issue of, oh, you're not presenting, why are you going? And I'm like, oh no, this is one of those that is really key to my line of research. So it's not about presentation, it's about what I'm going to really get out of this place, like, to really learn, meet people who are doing this work. Because also that's the thing, we are all really fragmented. So to be able to come into that space to know what other people are doing was really the biggest motivation for me.
So a lot of excitement for both of you, just even learning about the conference. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about your thoughts about it. Before we get to that, I wonder, will Sarah be able to join us on screen, or
Sarah is here. It's just Zoom is zooming, so she's not able to turn on her camera. That's just the challenge. But she's here. She can respond.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, welcome, Sarah. I'm sorry we're unable to bring you up in the picture, but thank you for joining us as well. So would you like to share with us what caused you to come to the conference and carve out that time? I'm not sure, Sarah, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Maybe your mic is muted, or maybe it's just not working right now. So I think we'll go ahead, and Sarah, hopefully you'll be able to join us if there's
Yes.
yeah, I'm sure, Agatha, you were working on that.
We'll try it again. Sorry.
Thank you. I think I'll mention, I don't know if this is the right time, but I think it's always the right time. Both of you brought up the wonderful Chioma Naji. Big shout out to the humble, amazing Chioma. Without her, we wouldn't be here right now. I can absolutely say that. So then let's share, we'd love to hear, so a lot of excitement in this space. Dr. Kelechi, you mentioned it was fate. Wonderful. I know there's a lot of people in other cultures that would say that was a coincidence, but I know as Africans, it was fate. So that it came to be. That's really neat. And Dr. Gloria as well, with your love of research and just the community that you mentioned yearning for. So now you've come to the conference. What were your expectations? How did that all play out? What now that the conference is over, what was that like?
Kelechi, you want to go first? I should.
Oh, you should go. You go. I went first.
Yeah, I think that I mentioned some of it. Again, my idea of how traditional research conferences go. We go, we sit down, we present our work, or we present our posters, we have some form of interaction, we move on, like you learn about what someone has done, and then you move on. But this space was affirming. It was welcoming. It was joyful. I don't know if anybody there, you would, it was just, a breath of fresh air. Everybody was interacting. We didn't know each other, but there was just some affinity, right? We gravitated towards each other. We had conversations with each other about it. We went through, different processes, the opening ceremony, the conversations about decolonizing research, learning about what the communities are doing and have done. Because even when I started this work, my introduction to the scholars were through the literature, right? So that was why I got to know of the Chioma and the Karanis and, Kokus and Augustus Woya and all of those people. It was through the literature. And those were the only people I knew, versus how much work was being, has been done and was, being done by the community. That disconnect. So it was nice to be in that space where we had people in the community who are really doing the work, connected with the people, sharing what they have done and continue to do. We had, different activities. I think we all kept saying, no, 2 days is not enough. We need more days. And I think that should be a testament of, how productive everything was in that space. The conversations were rich and nuanced. We had, people being able to talk about not just the research piece, but really the things that matter to the community in that sense, and how we can translate that based on the structures that exist in this country. So we know that, okay, this intervention work. How do we make sure that, it gets credited to us? We try to, publish it. We try to, have partnerships, networks, all of those things. It was really, really nice. That round circle Anissa mentioned, oh, I loved it, because it was, like a big session where everybody, I think the time we went over time. I think Ms. Portia had a hard time trying to contain. He's like, okay, it's time. And one person's like, nope, one more thing, right? One more thing. And I think that flexibility, it was wonderful. It didn't have to be so structured, rigid. People could, share their experiences, and it was beautiful. Like, it was such an affirming conference for me. I think it was because of that I went to the USCHA in Louisiana, because I hadn't been to a community conference before. So this was my first community conference. So it was such a good experience. I was like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Let me do the USCHA, because it's also a community conference. So that was my experience.
Yeah, I definitely concur. Anyone who knows me knows that a lot of my specialty and my expertise focuses on the concept of transnationalism. And that is the idea of being able to stay connected to home despite living in your new land of resettlement. And the reason I say that is because, when we got to that space, similar to what Sister Gloria is saying, the vibes were right. I mean, it really, I came into that space really not knowing anyone right in the community, but it felt like home. It really felt like home. It felt like we created this home away from home. That idea of Africanizing research. I mean, the conversations, the Palava Circle was something special. It really was. It was a very engaging. It was very rich. I mean, people really allowed themselves to be not just authentic, but even vulnerable. It allowed for them to really explain their vulnerability when it comes to research, and really explain what research does to them, what it does for them, and what we can do with it, and how we can tailor it in a way that suits us. And I think it was, and that's what, and just the way, but the way we conversed among each other was the special part, right? It was just we spoke like Africans among Africans, and it was and we didn't necessarily worry too much about translating for others, about trying to like we just allowed ourselves to authentically express how we can go about collectively um, affecting change in a way that will benefit our communities respectively. And so being in that space and coming in there, I felt right at home, and that was a very special experience for me. Similar to what Gloria is mentioning, I've never been at a conference like that. I mean, I'm used to APHA, and that's always this, that's just a big, large, like experiences, sometimes even for some very overwhelming, and to be able to be in something which was quite the opposite. It wasn't that many people in terms of like numbers, but it was quality over quantity. And so and that was new for me in that light. So I mean, I experienced and appreciated the, thank you, American Public Health Association. Yes, but the I really enjoyed just the conversations. I remember, it was also just really good to hear from the aunties and uncles and the elders, as they say, but being able to address them as such, and being able to be embraced as such, right, as a nephew and niece, and even though they may not have known me from Adam, but just being part of the African community, being embraced as being part of this village. For me, being a younger person, you're my nephew, you're my son, whatever the case may be. And that's something that we always, at least for me, and what I aspire to do in my work is continue to try to foster that type of, again, transnational community, and to be able to see that manifesting in what was happening there at the summit like we didn't want to leave, right? We didn't want to leave. That's just the truth, right? We know the money, we know how money is, but we wish we could be able to contribute more and do all of that. But it was a great experience. And like I think everybody's been saying, the Palava Circle, again, special thanks to I think it was Mrs. Kamara who facilitated that. It's an amazing time. It was memorable. So yeah, that was great. And also the village too. I should also mention like being part of the market, like and being part of that after we had the formal conference, but being able to come and actually experience the small African village and kind of be able to buy things. I mean, I even got to haggle, which is a fun thing to do when for anyone who knows, like be able to haggle and negotiate your price. I'm trying to buy this thing, and what's your last price? And being able to haggle at the market was really fun too. And the illustration was also amazing. The storytelling, the illustration. So there were some really unorthodox things that were very creative and very different, like unlike anything I've ever experienced at a conference or even a symposium. So it was something that just will always be etched in my memory.
I'm really curious, Dr. Kelechi, did you get your price?
Oh, yeah. I got a couple of dollars off, so I'm not gonna be mad.
Okay.
But when I use the credit card and they give me with the 2%, so I feel like I got finessed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at least you got a little bit knocked off. I can just imagine how the leadership team are all feeling hearing both of you with kind of expressing what just your experience. Everything we did in putting together this conference was very intentional in taking steps back at each point to say, okay, we all know how a traditional conference is run, but how do we Africanize it? How do we really just break down whatever barriers are there to Africanize it every step of the way? And so it's just, I'm sure, again, the rest of the leadership we're feeling that we created something that we set out to do. And of course, it was all of the participants. It could not have been possible without every single one of you who were there, being vulnerable, as you mentioned, and just giving it your all and coming together. So that was, thank you to all of you for that. Chioma has put in the chat here, our plan is to have a few minutes at the end of the panel to have a Q&A with the audience. So if any questions you have now, you can throw them up into the chat. So we'll try to get to them, as we go through. And Sarah, are you here? Are you able to participate? I know, Agatha, thank you. I know you were definitely with the screens kind of changing here and there, trying to get her on. Okay, Sarah, if you are ever able to, just please jump in. I'm just sorry you're not here with us right now. So we heard a lot of how you felt.
Sarah just wrote in the chat. She says, "I'm speaking, but you all can't hear me."
Oh, darn.
Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks. Huh. Okay, so I think, Anissa suggested, Sarah, if you maybe logging out and then coming back in. So hopefully we'll get you going then. So the next question, kind of segueing from that. So now you've left the conference, enjoyed it, felt good, all the connections. How has the conference impacted you? Has it had an effect in any of the work that you're doing? Have you been able to implement anything, or maybe just still processing and imagining how things could change? Share with us, if you will, some of those thoughts.
Yeah, I can I can start. All right, so yeah, absolutely, right. As I mentioned, my original intention as I was working towards whatever I was working on, after leaving the summit, I was even 10 times more motivated to get something going because now it was no longer just a vision. I saw it, right? Like I saw what the potential of what it is to be able to do something for Africans, and it's centered on African immigrant health, African immigrant communities, and really being able to take ownership of research and direct it in a way that can be able to impact the community and even the development of more scholarship in the future. So I was even more motivated to go back to the Midwest and really start working on putting together my plans for putting together a consortium in the Midwest. And I started working on that, and it's called IWA, the Interconnected African Wellness Assembly, and I was working on trying to develop something in the Midwest. I've applied for funding, right? And I, sought out the support. I reached out to AIHRC in regards to that as well, because I want to do this in collaboration and partnership. The whole goal is to continue to expand and hopefully find a way to be able to develop more partnership that kind of goes westward, right? Like all the way to California, and being able to find ways to develop, more national data collections and more nationwide repositories that can be able to be central to the African immigrant experience in the US, and even furthermore for even maybe potentially affecting those back in the continent or across the diaspora. So to make a long story short, it really motivated me to go back and really continue the work that I initially was dreaming of, but now really wanted to make it a reality because I already see what it can be, and I want to be able to help contribute to what you all are doing, from in my own way, from my own region, and be able to continue to build on the work that you all are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, great. I just want to make sure that I got that right. So it's the organization that you've started is IAWA, the Interconnected African Wellness Association?
Assembly. So it's
Assembly,
it's the Interconnected African Wellness Assembly. It also stands for Iowa, but it also stands for the Ubuntu. I am because we are. So that was the whole gist behind that.
Great, neat. Okay.
That's nice. I think that one of the things was the opportunity for me to meet a lot of people in person. So a lot of people whose work I've read, a lot of people who I knew was doing work, like the ability to meet them in person. And then also, brainstorm a lot of potential research ideas from that angle, and collaborations that, with organizations that, we met, like potential ideas about, okay, how are we going to do this work? And there are 2 commentaries currently that you are working on that should come out soon. That is with some people that I met at a conference. There's one that we had a paper together. She was from California. She came from California, so we met. She was around, so we put out a paper on African immigrants in California through the California Health Interview Survey. So that is out there. We have a paper that came out again on the need for data, and I would like to acknowledge Dr. Koku's support in us putting together the data, because we were talking about data. And if you know anything about HIV, we always continue to talk about how HIV is a big thing among African immigrants, but again, data. So we were able to pull some census data, American Community Survey data, to really map out the number of African immigrants in the United States that are living in states that have high HIV incidences that have been marked as EHE counties. EHE is ending the HIV epidemic. It's a government policy, right? To be able to demonstrate
Gloria, sorry to cut you off. Could you slow down a little bit so the interpreters can catch that? Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you so much for drawing my attention to that. So we have the EHE, which is the ending the HIV epidemic. So it's a government policy. So it's a way that is like, really meant to allocate a lot more resources for counties that have high HIV incidence. So what we did was to be able to look at the number of African immigrants that are living in this community for us to be able to make a case that, look, African immigrants live in these communities. If you are going to, give out resources, well, you need to be able to consider that, you know, the need for that whole aggregation argument. So there's been a lot of work. Kirani on this call, I think, is also a part of that. Then in recent commentary that we are also working on again is looking at LAI PrEP, the long-acting injectable PrEP. So this is new. It's going to be twice a year. That is, and PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's medication to prevent HIV. And we now have an injectable version where you take it just twice a year. And this is almost as close as we've come to a vaccine for HIV, to be fair, because it's twice a year. And so we are looking at a paper, and in that paper, we are approaching it from a strength-based perspective, similar to the conversation we had, cultural assets, right? So that is where we are looking at the paper. And so in that paper, you see our discussion about using cultural strategies, storytelling, you know, open calls, WhatsApp, all of those things. Those are strategies we are arguing that is the African community is very familiar with. So let us use those strategies. Again, it goes to the idea of who defines what is evidence, right? So we need to be able to publish this so that it becomes part of the evidence and the foundation. So those work have been really instrumental. Like I got to meet a lot of people that I'm collaborating with. I'm collaborating with the IHRC itself in grant writing. There is a community organization, Akana, in Pennsylvania. Yeah, Philly is in one of them. I always confuse the two. Either Philly or one is in you know, one is a state and one is a city in one. But you know, we are having conversations about potential, like, you know, collaborations as well. So really, this was for me life-changing, the opportunity to work with community and not just say that, oh, you know, I do work among the community. Those are two different things. So this has been really life-changing.
I also just want to add, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that even though I know like the space, there were some heavy hitters in that room. You know, we were fortunate enough to run into the, you know, everyone who does African immigrant health research knows about the Venters and Gani. You know,
Yeah, paper.
one of the authors was actually there. I think Dr. Gani was Gani was there, I believe. And you know, it was awesome to meet her, and then also, you know, Dr. Kamiya was there, Hugo Kamiya. Like there were some really, you know, important people who've done some incredible work in the field, and being able to interact with them, and not only interact with them, but being able to hear their encouragement, right? To be able to give you insight on not just how things were, but I mean, there was someone who specifically mentioned to me or to us, you know, the idea of shifting how we go about publishing and thinking about gone are the days of trying to be the solo artist. Right? We're no longer trying to be the solo artist anymore, right? Like now you're trying to work in diverse dynamic teams and bringing in a variety of expertise and bringing in very people from different disciplines and having different skill sets represented and demonstrated in these forms of publications. You know, and I've always been a proponent of non-traditional ways of sharing our work, not just through publications, but through, for me, I do podcasting, like, but there are different ways of being able to do that and being able to get that encouragement from those who kind of paved the way, you know, when they were really, you know, not many people paying attention and or funding or trying to really care about issues regarding African immigrant health, to be able to hear some of those predecessors share that experience, and it was very helpful and motivating for me as well. So I have to add that to this. It was impactful for my experience.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I only wish we had more time. I want to thank you both for sharing everything. At this point, we have to move on to a short 5-minute break. However, after break, we'd like to open it up to the audience for the questions for a Q&A time. Okay? All right, thank you. So everyone will take a 5-minute break. Please set your timers, whatever you need to do, just a quick stretch, you know, whatever you got to do. 5 minutes, we'll meet back and carry on. Thank you. For For those of you still with us, we will meet back at 5:34.
And the chicken's always bigger. Wait, but remember, yes, remember, just remember, love's the bottom line at Christmas time.
Hello, everybody. Hope that you are able to stand up and stretch a little bit, get something to drink, something to snack on. So I welcome you back into our space. I can't do as good as a job of Miss Portia, but I welcome you back with all the love and positive vibes that she brings. We would like to jump into our community discussion, and that means having dialogue and discussion with you all, and making some connections in terms of the work that we did as part of the Africanizing the Research Paradigm Summit, and some of the work that you're doing, maybe some of the questions that you have. So I know that there were a couple of questions that were in the chat prior to us taking a break. If folks can, I would love for folks to come on video, just so I can see folks and enjoy people's beautiful, handsome faces. If you're able to come on video, please do. It helps us in having a stronger and intimate conversation with each other. So please let me know that you are back. If you come on video, thumbs up. Say I'm here in the chat. We just want to make sure that folks are back and present and ready to engage. I see a couple of thumbs up. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Sam. I see you. Thank you for folks turning on their videos. Thanks, folks, for acknowledging in the chat. All right, great. So let's get started. I want to make sure our interpreters, are you all back and ready? You can just put a note in the chat. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get started. So there were a couple of questions that came up in the chat, and I want to make sure that we bring them into the space. And I would say that, you know, I know some of the questions came up during the panel, but if our AIHRC partners want to engage in responding to the question, please do. So one of the questions I think is directly to you, Kelechi. How can I connect with the Interconnected African Assembly? If you want to tell the folks, the good peoples, how they can connect with the work you're doing in Chicago.
Yeah, you could just send me an email, and you know, I can put my email on the in the chat. Anyone that's interested in reaching out and learning more about how I'm going about putting this together, I can be happy to share that with y'all.
Great, great. That's what it's about, direct contact. And I think that was definitely one of the goals that we had as part of the summit, where it wasn't only about the community connecting with researchers, but it was also about the community and researchers connecting to funders. And we are so thankful that we have funders in the room who were willing to hold conversations and really, you know, share with participants what does it mean to actually seek funding? What are some of the funding opportunities that are out there specifically around immigrants? And we know that this is a critical conversation given the new administration, given what we're about to go into for the next 4 years. And so thank you again to Robert Wood Johnson, the Office of AIDS Research at NIH, P. Corey, and Neotech and NASTAD for being engaged and present. So another question that came up is the topic of Africanizing research has me wondering, as a media outlet, how can we also Africanize the presentation of this research through media? So how can our media partners, our ethnic media, even engage in Africanizing some of the research findings that we have coming out of our project or some of the projects that folks are engaged in? Anybody can jump in. I'm gonna lean a little bit into MCFS. I know you all do some partnership work with local ethnic media. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Ms. Donna?
Or good evening, everyone. Yes, Multicultural Community Family Services. We are located in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Upper Darby. And we work with the Liberian we partner with the Liberian Radio and Television Network. And it is a great partnership to have. We advertise a lot of what we do, our community outreach. We were so honored to have them be a part of the summit, and you got a lot of, you know, pictures and videos from that. But it's a great way to, you know, kind of collaborate with the not only the community but world nationwide. And we had an opportunity to work with them regarding the opioid epidemic in the immigrant communities, especially in the African immigrant communities. And we reached a wide variety of people, not only in Pennsylvania, but in Liberia and other different places, which brought attention to that. So it's real important that, you know, you partner with a lot of these different organizations, especially the media, because just as Chioma said, with the change of, you know, we're going to go through a lot of changes with the new administration. So we have to really get ourselves out there, and we have to connect with everyone. And this was a good opportunity for us to connect with more than just our small, close-knit community.
Thank you. And I know some of the work that we have done in partnering with ethnic media is actually just going on and doing interviews and sharing about the information. We also have created PSAs, public service announcements, to let people know what's coming out of our research and where people can connect to engage. As part of our projects, several of our partners locally partnered with ethnic media to recruit participants into our research studies. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, especially we know that ethnic media for African immigrants is one of the main ways in which people are getting information. Definitely we see that here in Massachusetts. They're very culturally specific, very linguistic specific. So it allows you to connect with communities in a way in which communities are already gathering and having conversations, right? And so there's definitely a role that I think ethnic media can play. Another question is, what is the agenda to include African LGBTQ migrants? Unfortunately, when we build communities for Africans, home and abroad, it has surgically excluded sexually gendered diverse populations. Any thoughts around that?
Chairman, can you read that question out again?
Sure. Maybe David, if you're able to come off, you can speak your question into the space if you're still on.
Sure. Hi, all.
Hello.
My question is, how are we trying to include sexual and gender diverse / LGBTQ migrants in the work that we are trying to build, or the community that we are trying to build? Because in my experience, most times when we do that, we surgically exclude them, or if not, we actually do more harm by re-traumatizing them. And that is something I'm really interested in, because to understand, if you're bringing this population into this space, is this a space that is going to re-traumatize them? Is it a space that is going to be harmful to them?
I think that's a great question. And more than anything, MAC, the umbrella organization that AIHRC operates under, can speak more than that. I mean, to that than any one individual organization of the AIHRC. That being said, I think what is important, and thank you for entering this question into this space, And it is important that we, again, acknowledge that this is a safe space, but to further acknowledge that that this is a difficult conversation to have. This is a hard topic because of all of the stereotypes and the trauma that has become part of our of the thread of our society and our community. And recognizing that, I think, is a beginning of the process of engagement and inclusion and supporting the bringing in and creating that sense of belonging and providing that sense of safety. So if we can, operate from that place and space of we are all one, regardless of who we are and what we represent, then it gives us the opportunity to dialogue, to support each other, irrespective of the differences and the viewpoints that may not align, but being mindful that we remain one community, we remain one people, we share each other burdens, sorrows, and triumphs, and we must, if we are to project strength, if we are to live strength, we must become that whole so that we can grow, so that we can heal, and so that we can work together and truly become one community.
Mhm. Thank you, Ms. Portia.
I wanted,
Go ahead, Anissa.
I wanted to add to that, David, how we got here, when the early on the researches that we did, and in particular when we were working with the elder African and community, like elders who had the foundation of only 2 genders, even the topic of when we were getting demographics, even asking of how do you identify or what sexual orientation you have, that was even very difficult, even translating it without really getting the backlash of elders asking, why are you asking me this question? It was very offensive because these are folks that come from a very older generations that are new in the country that don't have this view. But with our collaboration, we are at a space where we are where we are inclusive, and we are and empathetic and sympathetic, and also have the compassion, and we are creating a space for young people and with people that have grown up here that are very diverse mindset to join our collaboration, and we are creating the space to have these conversations. And in our when we started the summit, it was not the intention to surgically exclude this conversation we had during the summit, and we are moving towards more inclusive and more aware position in including everybody from all walks of life, all different and ages and diversity. But when we first started doing the research, we with the populations that we were sometimes working with, and when we saw the need in Africanizing and a research paradigm, when we realized all the barriers that we were working with, this is also one of the barriers that we are working towards breaking it and creating a space of welcoming. So we definitely welcome you to being part of our conversation as well, and helping us moving towards that and creating a space where everybody has a voice and everybody's welcome and everybody's accepted and everybody is a safe space for them to ask the questions. And we also need to ask ourselves these questions that are very necessary for this time and age that we are living in. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know we have a couple of minutes left, and our collaborative wants to make an announcement and want to actually take some time to get your feedback and insight as it relates to this announcement. So you heard a lot about the summit, and one of the things that Anissa shared were the next steps that were a part of our small talk conversation. And so we have been sort of thinking about how can our collaborative respond to that, right? Because we're also a collaborative that we're not going to ask you to share information and then we don't do something about it and do something with it, right? So we're a collaborative of action. And so we have been talking since the summit about how can we really respond to what has been asked in terms of next steps. And so some of the next steps, just to remind you all, was to create a research hub, a place where individuals and organizations that are interested in doing work around African immigrant health can gather. Another one is to dig deeper into how we disaggregating data. How are we looking at ways in which we can have validated data scales, but then also how are we making sure that African immigrants are being counted in some of the national and state level data sets in our healthcare systems, right? And the third was around capacity building, a commitment to build capacity within communities. So communities are not only partners, but they're leading, right? We define ourselves as a community-led partnership, and we do think that that is where the shift can happen so that we move from colonized approaches to decolonized approaches to Africanizing approaches. And then the other one was around how are we thinking about capturing the health of our African communities nationally. And that's where Photo Voice came in as a participatory research method in which to do that. So those have been our next steps. So I just want to take a poll, and if you all can use the chat. When you hear those next steps, which ones resonate with you? If I told you you had to pick one, which one would you want us to prioritize? I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Repeat the options again.
The options are capacity building.
Y'all put it on the chat.
I'll put it in the options in the chat. Y'all got us working today. Okay, research hub, capacity building, research hub. Photo Voice for a community assessment. Yes. Just dump it in the chat for us. Out of those three, which ones do you think that we should prioritize? Oh, and data collection. Thank you, Genevieve. I forgot that one. The data collection one. So it's 4. I apologize. Data collection. Genevieve, prioritize data collection. Okay. I'm seeing Research Hub come up.
Wait,
Give you about 30 more seconds. Again, the choices are disaggregating data, capacity building, Research Hub, and Photo Voice as a community assessment. Research Hub, okay. A lot of folks are saying Research Hub. Prioritize data. 30 more seconds. Just type it in the chat for us. All of them. Okay, Kelechi.
Yes, we can do those simultaneously.
Okay. All of them. Okay. Agatha, list all of them. All right. Thank you very much. So our big announcement is to let you know that we are Agatha, if you're going to post the slide for me, that we are excited to announce that we're going to start holding monthly gatherings for African immigrant health and research. We're very excited that we're taking this step. We think that it is a beginning step to collectively, with you all, with other partners, to talk about these areas of next steps to prioritize. And so this monthly gathering will start in January. The first gathering will be January 29th from 3 to 4:30 Eastern time. Y'all do the math, because I know there are different time zones here. You all do the math. And so these virtual sessions, we actually want your input on what they should look like, what should their format and their topics. You can tell that we're very engaging and we want to be responsive. We know what we want to hold based on what came out of the summit, but we want to hear from you. So in our last minutes together, if folks want to come off mute, You can raise your hand. Just share, now that we've announced what we're going to do, Kelechi asked, will these meetings be recorded? Good question.
I
'Cause
asked
we
that
can
because
talk about it. We can talk about it. So folks have any thoughts around what would you want us to accomplish as part of these monthly virtual sessions, topics, formats? We are here to listen. What do you think these sessions should look like, feel like? You can come off mute or you can type in the chat. I know there's some amazing thinkers in this room, so would love to hear.
At the airport, getting ready to take a flight back to Atlanta.
okay, now we know.
Michael, were you saying something? I'm sorry. I heard you say you're getting ready to get on the flight.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you? Yes, for me, it would be community engagement. I'm getting ready in about 10 to 15 minutes to take a flight. I'm in the midst of travel, but community engagement is very important.
Mhm. Great. So focus on community engagement. In the chat, I see collaborations with community partners. Where do community partners need help in establishing their own research? David said sharing resources on culturally congruent research designs and scales. Gloria said brainstorming sessions where we can get ideas from each other. Any other thoughts about what these sessions could look like, feel like?
I definitely think in addition to everything that's already mentioned as far as sharing resources, alternating as far as community resources and academic resources and how we can bridge certain gaps. And I also think for once, I think this space should also be used from time to time as a celebratory space. I mean, for all the accomplishments and successes that happen, whether it's in the community, whether it's academically, whether it's, whatever the case may be, to kind of celebrate and share progress that's being made. And also, I think one thing I remember Gloria mentioning when we were in Boston is when we develop instruments, when we develop things, share them so that we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. So I think when those types of things happen or those, opportunities are there, supporting that, right? And even just, I was definitely thinking, I think Roxanne just mentioned the idea of matchmaking. Yes, like people matching interest and matching people's needs. So I think there can be a variety of things, but of course we want to make sure that there's structure to it. But I would definitely say that being able to, also be able to check in, use a portion of that to just kind of check in and see where various communities, various partners all involved, what updates do they have to share and what things are moving forward and are they doing to kind of continue to move the work forward.
Thank you, Kelechi. Some other comments you already amplified. Roxanne's comment, Mr. Julius, community scholars bringing in art and culture. Janice, a mix of research education sessions, perhaps quarterly research showcase highlighting research projects with partners. Last 5 minutes, what would you like to see? Okay, Janice, I feel like you just wrote out what we should do. Thank you. David, I see that your hand is up. We'll give you the last comment before we close for this evening.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I think I'm seconding what Dr. Eve Lambert is saying. I think also trying to see how we can develop an opportunity or a pipeline to start mentoring the next generation of clinicians and researchers, giving them opportunity. Because if you're not in this space where you have direct research, like exposing people to research at early stage so that they can start getting, the resources that they need to be able to be competitive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I want to end by saying thank you to everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think that this has been definitely enlightening for me in terms of how we can think about moving forward. Appreciate the panelists for sharing their experiences. We will be providing this recording. So for folks who were not able to attend, you will be able to share that with your share this recording with your colleagues, peers, community members, community partners, and reach out to us. This is our website. You can contact us through our website and let us know what's going on and continue to push us and hold us accountable for the work that we say we're going to do. We look forward to seeing you all January 29th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We look forward to seeing you in our monthly